Okay, hi everybody. My name's Sam. Obviously a little bit different tonight, different setup, and welcome to our Applicant Experience Series. So before we actually get started with the presentation and start moving ahead with that, obviously like the rest of the UK, we've had to move online as well. That includes all of our lectures, our seminars. We've moved everything onto this online platform. So like I said, a little bit different, but we have reacted very well to this at UCFB. And we're still doing everything as normal, really, given the circumstances. Just to let you know, we do have a live chat available. If you click on the icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that'll obviously change your view, so you can start to post questions in the chat. We do have representatives on hand to answer any questions that you might have throughout the course of this evening's applicant experience. So this session is intended for those people who have applied for UCFB. So the main intention is just to provide as much information as possible. We want to make sure that this decision that you're about to make is the right one for you. We want to make sure it's the right course that you're choosing, and also not only that, but also the right institution for you as well. You may have gathered that UCFB is very different from anywhere else. We're very unconventional. So I just want to fill in maybe a few gaps that you might have in some knowledge as to how we implement certain things and how certain content is delivered, and how do we include various other factors that are involved in our employability and enrichment program. How do we include those into our curriculum? So I'm just going to shed some light on that. So you'll hear from me for about 15 minutes, just as to really what makes UCFB different, what sets us apart, and why we may be the institution for you. So to start, I just want to really go into the presentation as to what makes UCFB different. So to do that, what I'm going to have to do is just briefly touch on our unique learning model. So our learning model, we like to separate it into three different things. It's a trifold approach, and that includes what we teach, where we teach, and how we teach. So three different things. Now, obviously on the screen there, you'll see what we teach: football, sport, and events. So our programs are all very niche. They're very tailored to the student, really, in order to really enhance the chances of the student's success in their chosen career pathway, wherever that may be. So whether that is in the football industry, if it's in the business side of football, if it's in the media, the wider sports industry, or even in the events industry, we go into various details within those, various different niches. Whether that's like I mentioned, the business sector, we separate it into marketing, the international business, media, finance. There's so many different areas that you can explore, as again in broadcasting, media, law, psychology. So hopefully you've had a chance to see the full course list. If not, head onto our website. It's all on there. And where we teach as well, we will go into that. We obviously have the two iconic campuses, one in the north in Manchester, based around which is the Etihad Stadium, which is at the heart of your campus, and again down in London with Wembley at the heart of your campus there. And then how we teach. Now this is really where UCFB comes into its own. We have three different ways that how we deliver our course content, whether that's, as you can see, classroom, guest speakers, or networking opportunities, which we will come on to. So to begin with, what we teach. Now, as I mentioned before, all of our degrees are bespoke. They're very tailored toward, and they're geared up really towards benefiting the student in terms of their career aspirations when they finish the degree, where they can then go on to. Now, all of our degree programs are taught by an international academic team, some of which are ex-industry professionals. I mean, it's a good blend, but they're all very, very highly qualified in their fields, which they deliver the content for. Where do we teach those? As I mentioned before, obviously Manchester and London. So in Manchester, we're based with the Etihad campus at the heart of your campus. Just to give you shed a little bit more light onto Etihad and our Wembley campus. So obviously Wembley Stadium, iconic stadium, and that's going to give you just a little bit of an idea as to how it's set up there. So you can see the Wembley Stadium right in the heart of it, and then you'll see things that all surround it. These are all facilities, state-of-the-art facilities that UCFB use. Now, you can see First Way, which lies just to the right of Wembley Stadium. That could be your halls of residence if you chose to, obviously, if you chose to live in. And then you've got things like the Hive, you've got Hendon FC, all these different places which really do pull together your experience as a UCFB student. Now, again, Etihad Stadium. just to give you an idea of the setup there in a similar format, you'll see the Etihad Stadium right in the centre at the heart of the campus. But then you've got things like the National Cycling Centre, the big velodrome in Manchester. You'll see the National Basketball Centre, Bellevue. You'll see Piccadilly Place, which is where you're obviously going to find your learning resources there. Now, Manchester is very, very accessible. All these places, we have the metro in Manchester, which can just ship you to and from all of these different places. Obviously, your halls of residence in Manchester City Centre, which you'll see there is Liberty Point, and that in the transport, really, the transport links there really are good. Now, this one is really exciting. I've been really dying to talk about our Global Hub series for some time. Obviously, New York, Toronto, London, Atlanta. These are places. London, Manchester, Atlanta. Although our home campuses, that's Manchester and London, that's where you're going to be based. We do have our extra campuses, Toronto, New York, Atlanta, and Melbourne. Now, in Toronto, you're looking inside the Toronto FC Stadium, New York, the New York Red Bulls Arena, the Mercedes-Benz Arena, and also Melbourne in the Melbourne Cricket Ground. These are our global hubs. Now, it really does benefit the student to know and have awareness of the global industry, the international scene. Sport isn't just local to the UK, it's global, it's all over the world. So if you could get a flavour for these different markets, wherever you may go, if you decide to go to Australia, to go to Melbourne, go to a global summit there. Now, the one in Melbourne happened in January. Our students actually went there. So it was a great success. Our students really, really did enjoy it. And you'll see there on the screen now just a quick snapshot of what our students actually got up to. So it was 10 days out there, and over those 10 days, they got to hear from 15 guest speakers. These are industry professionals, 15 of them, covering 7 different sports, 5 live sports experiences, learning behind the scenes of 4 elite sports venues, and they attended 2 networking events as well, which is very, very, very important. Now, when we're talking about our employability enrichment, I will come on to the importance of networking. But just staying on the theme of Melbourne, just to give you an idea of what our students did get up to, having just returned from Melbourne. They, as you see on screen there, from Molly, one of our current students who has just returned, really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, from Philip. So you get out what you put in. That is true in the sports industry. If you really do go out there and explore, get out into foreign markets, start learning different opportunities that are out there, you will really, really reap the rewards of that. So finally, it's how do we teach? Now, obviously, you've got your curriculum, which I'm sure that you are familiar with, having come through an education system. But what sets UCFB apart is we recognise what it takes to gain employment in this industry. Academics will take you so far. On top of that, you need to raise your employability. And how do you do that? Now, you can raise your academic ability, as it says on the screen, by combining this academic knowledge that you will learn during your time at UCFB and combining that with our employability and enrichment program. So in terms of our employability enrichment program, we have industry partners, and with these industry partners, we can get you hands-on placement. So you'll be working in the industry, gaining experience in the industry. Not only that, but building a network. Now, it's all about enhancing your CV, your personal and professional development. It's all about coming into your own so that you're a well-rounded professional. By the time that you finish your study, you're ready to go on and take on whatever job that you've chosen, whatever suits you. Just to give you an idea of places that our students have been, who we have worked with in the past, on the screen there, the likes of Man United, the likes of Liverpool. Obviously, I won't go through them all, but you can see on the screen there various different places that our students have gone on to. Some more as well, and let's not forget, it is a global industry, so some of our students do choose to travel abroad. They do choose to go to different places and really get a taste for what it's like to work in a foreign industry. So there you go, just a few more there as well. Now, in terms of our enrichment, now you've got your experience and you may build a network as well, but we also have enrichment courses and events that happen throughout your academic year. Now, obviously, as I alluded to before, sport is a global industry. So with that in mind, it may benefit you in your chosen specialization. If you learned a foreign language, for example, if you learned something like Spanish, if you wanted to work out in Spain, if you came to us, we can factor that into your curriculum. Things like public speaking as well, very, very important in whatever job you may choose to do. Public speaking will always play a part. So if you feel like you may be a little bit behind in your public speaking skills, come to us and we can help you. And then we go into more niche things. It could be things like match commentary masterclass, match analysis. It could be an agent workshop if that's the avenue you wanted to take as well. Each year as well, we also run an entrepreneurship competition. Now, that could be your chance to really get your head around business models and start presenting your business models to our board. And then with the winner of that, you have the chance of being financed by the chairman of UCFB, and also gaining a mentor who the chairman of UCFB may be your business mentor further in the future. Okay, so just off the back of that as well is the guest speakers. Now, this again forms part of your employability session. So in terms of guest speakers, you'll see just flashing across the screen there a few names, high-profile names that you may or may not have heard of. But the list goes on and on and on. And we do this throughout the academic year, from people like Roberto Martinez to Sam Allardyce to Steve McLaren. Now, these people are not only inspirational to hear from, but on top of that, they are currently working in this industry. They know what it takes to gain employment in this industry today. They know the current climate of where this industry is at. So being able to network with these people, you learn a lot from them. You learn what does it take in this day and age right now. If I wanted to get that role, if I wanted to achieve whatever success that you may be pursuing, you can actually gain one-to-one interaction with these people in order to obviously gain more knowledge and content that may drive your success. We also have a career service as well, and their sole purpose is to guide and coach you. That could be through online workshops, it could be CV workshops, it could be through various different careers fairs, just to broaden your network. So here at UCFB as well, something that we're really proud of is we're over 90% of all of our graduates. This was in 2018. We're in employment within 6 months of graduating. So that's almost 2/3 of our graduates are currently working in sport, which is a tremendous success. And we're really happy, obviously, to deliver these statistics. So with this in mind, why is that? I mean, why is our success rate so high in this respect? It's because we are more than just academic learning. We really do broaden out into the industry. We see each one of our students from the moment they walk in the door, we see them as the future of the industry. We really want to get you, the student, involved in that industry as well. So that's enough from me, but just a reminder of obviously how you can control this new interface, which may be new to a lot of you out there. Bottom right hand corner, you will be able to change your view. Now, again, if you've got any questions, feel free to type them into the dialog box, into the chat box. We have representatives on hand all evening who will be able to support you in that way. You'll also be able to find my email address in there as well. So if you do think of any questions after today, if you get to the point where you think, oh, I wish I'd asked that, as happens a lot, please just drop me an email. I'll do my best to help you as much as I can along your journey as well. So as I said, that's enough from me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand you over to BBC Sports' Mark Clemmit.
Sam, thank you very much for sharing the nuts and bolts of how UCFB work. And actually, just to pick up on what Sam has been talking about there, about employability, I'm just looking at some of the positions that UCFB students hold right now. Events and engagement executive at Leicester City, sports coach at a prep school, video producer for the FA, digital media executive at the Scottish Professional Football League, female development officer at Man U. I could go on and on. Events manager, like a really senior role at the Football Association. Watford sponsorship and partnership manager and radio presenter as well. The full gambit covered by students that were very recently at UCFB. Sam sort of shared those nuts and bolts as to hopefully why UCFB is the right university for you to move forward with your education. For the rest of this webinar, we're going to give you a little bit of a flavour of the added value and the learning model that UCFB do actually use. Throughout the week, we're going to get little insights from people who have already started to work and in some cases had lengthy careers in the areas to which you might inspire. Tomorrow, we're going to actually concentrate on things from a business perspective. Then on Thursday, it'll be coaching. But today, our focus is very much on media. It's an area that I've been lucky enough to work in for the last 20 years. I have been on the national news and sports station, BBC Radio 5 Live, for the last 2 decades. I've been on national television with the BBC on programs like the Football League Show, Football Focus, Match of the Day Live, Final Score for the last decade. My career path is probably a little bit more haphazard and accidental than the one that you are planning. My career path started in the back of a car in 1998. I'm a Middlesbrough fan. I was coming back from an away game at Sheffield United. We were beaten 1-0. And we had a Colombian striker at the time called Hamilton Ricard. He didn't get a single shot on target, but he managed to bruise every single one of the 2,000 away support. His shots were flying about all over and hitting us. And on the way back in the car, this was the year after Middlesbrough had lost both cup finals and been relegated, I commented to a friend of mine, wouldn't it be great if there was a sort of fans program on local radio discussing the trials and tribulations of following your favourite club? He agreed. Over the next couple of months, we worked on this little format, which I guess was like a podcast, the sort of thing that everybody's doing now. But in those days, you didn't really self-start. We did. We recorded it around a dining room table, not dissimilar to the one I'm talking to you at now. At home, we produced a couple of cassettes, sent one off to the local BBC, one off to the local commercial station. And within a week, the editor of the BBC station had rung and he'd given us a 5-week trial on 30 quid each. And everything that's happened to me over the last 2 decades has come from that moment and that chance comment in the car. I'm going to pick up on loads of things that Sam talked about. I've got to pick up on the communication, the presentation skills. Actually, as well as my broadcast work, I host a heck of a lot of events, from the roll box at Wembley on Cup final day to some very serious conferences about hate crime and mental health and sports betting integrity. But I also coach communication and presentation skills. I believe that your qualification is only your entry ticket to the marketplace. How you inspire others, how you educate others, how you influence others will determine how far you will go over the course of your career. I also suggest that you want to be a sponge tonight and soak up all these lovely little morsels of wisdom that will come through your way from some of the guests we're going to meet over the next 40 minutes or so. You never know when they'll come in handy. I have a little section on my phone in the notes section there. I just type them in, little things that inspire me. And if I'm having a bad day or I'm feeling a little bit of a fix, I have a read through and just remind myself of some of those things. And I think if you're going to succeed in this trade also, that networking that Sam talked about, absolutely essential. You will have to push yourselves because nothing is going to drop, or very few things are going to drop into your lap. You're going to have to scrape away. You can't go to a prospective employer unless they're advertising a job. But you can't go and just say, please give me a job. You've got to go and be entrepreneurial. And those are the kind of values that have sort of helped me to get established. It's a repeat industry, football. A lot of sport is. It's not just a single event here and there. Believe me, by the time you hit week 36 or 38 of the football season, you've started at the beginning of August. We're all still going strong halfway through May or towards the end of May if you're following a team that's in the playoffs. It's a hard old schlep. So your levels of persistence and resilience will need to be absolutely prime. I'm going to talk to you now. I'm going to talk with one of the students that came off to that global summit in Australia. What better way for you to find out what life at UCFB is like than to be joined by one of them? I'm delighted to say that Lewis Wiseman is along. Hello, mate. What a week we had in Melbourne at the sort of Southern Hemisphere's Wembley Stadium at the MCG. What did you learn?
I learned a lot. We heard from a lot of marketing experts on cricket and AFL, which is obviously a big sport down there. And I took away lots of things from them in terms of how to reach more fans through online marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and did your perspective change? Did you learn things over the course of the week that you now applying and have helped to take your career off in a slightly different direction?
I guess so, yeah. I learned a lot about communication and networking while I was there. And prior to that, perhaps I hadn't utilized that enough. So since then, I've been networking as much as I can and communicating professionally, I'd say is the word. And I feel like it's helped me along the way so far, yeah.
Good. Will you share with us the course that you were on, what stage you're at in your career? Give us a little bit of background as to how you ended up in the position you are now, talking to prospective students who might want to come and study with UCFB in the future.
Okay. I'm in my third year of football business and marketing at the Etihad campus. I moved over from Australia to study. I'm originally from Brisbane, so that was a big step. But I settled in quite well. As Sam said earlier, Manchester's easy to get around, which was good for me because I had no idea. But so far, it's been going well. I've used the employment team a hell of a lot to get placements along the way. Probably had 4 or 5 placements that they've sorted for me. And currently I'm working as a social media producer, sort of freelancing for a few different people. So.
Share a bit more detail on those placements that you have, because they will have shaped you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I started as a placement with a company in Manchester who do sports marketing for UEFA, PlayStation, some big clients. So that was good to just open my eyes completely. And that was sorted by the employment team. I then did two separate placements for the Rugby League Association, one for their grand final and then a separate event. And I've done a lot of content writing for different organisations that UCFB employment team had contacts within, and they just passed on my details to help me out. So I've done a lot in all sorts of areas, and every time I've gone to the employment team with a question or an idea on a career path, they've been able to help.
And give us a little flavour on a day-to-day basis what being a UCFB student is like.
Well, depending on what time you've got your first class. It'll either be raining or raining in Manchester. But you get.
Well, that's just ruled out you getting a placement with the Manchester Tourist Board in the very near future, but that's okay. You've made your bed, you can lie in it.
You can lie in it, yeah. But no, it's great to study in the stadium. I've been to Wembley to check it out as well, and that's quite amazing. So the fact that every classroom I've been in since I've started at UCFB is a corporate box or a dining room for a match day is turned into a classroom for us. So that's incredible. And then to have the backdrop of the stadium and the ground behind us is amazing. So that's something you get to see day to day as a bit of aesthetics. But then the teachers we've had, industry professionals, have worked as for me as a media and business student, they've worked as journalists or high up in different businesses within the football and sports industry. So it's been good to just hear their knowledge as well as the curriculum that they've had to teach us as well.
Yeah, I guess there's a real gasp factor as well when some of the bigger names come in. They're so close, you can touch them, you can hear them, you can get their experiences. When the England head coach is dropping by to have a chat, I mean, these are priceless moments.
Yeah, definitely. We've had some massive guest speakers. We had Kevin Nolan recently, Alan Shearer. Which is incredible. I actually do.
You got to interview.
That's right. I do an internship with the marketing team at UCFB, and I asked on the off chance, could I ask a few questions? And they said, why don't you interview him? So that was a great opportunity for me. And I don't want to put this on UCFB marketing, but I'm sure if students show a willingness to do well and work hard, there'll be opportunities like that in the future.
Well, go on, give them a little insight as to how you felt, because that's a huge opportunity. You know, the Premier League's all-time greatest goal scorer, a regular pundit every week on our television screens on BBC One on Match of the Day. How did you feel into the run-up to that? How did you prepare for that moment? How did you deal with the occasion itself?
I was nervous already. I knew on the couple of days before I'd be asking a few questions, and then on the day, Neil from UCFB Marketing just said, you're going to do the whole interview, Lewis, go for it. So I had about an hour to calm down. And I thought my goal is to make him laugh, just to make myself feel more relaxed. So I think at the very start, I said, could you introduce yourself for the camera, please, Alan, and what you currently do? And he said he's Alan Shearer and he's a BBC pundit. And I said, and am I right in saying that you're a footballer as well, Alan? And he had a giggle. So yeah, that was my goal achieved, to make him have a laugh.
Yeah, and were there moments in that where you could think back to the experience you had as a student, where you were able to apply things, stuff you'd learned from some of the journalists that had taught you over the course of your studies?
Yes, well, one of my teachers, Chris Cooper, I think he's going to be speaking to you guys later on.
He is, very soon.
He does interviews with footballers and managers on a weekly basis. So, and we had a lesson with him, a class with him, sorry, called broadcast journalism, in which he taught us how to do proper interviewing, and using his knowledge from that. I mean, in the back of my head, I'm sure it was coming through in the questions I was asking and how I was taking the interview.
Because you make an important point. Everybody aspires to it. And perhaps there are people out there who think it's quite easy, but actually when that moment comes and you have to set the tone prior to an interview and show your interviewee that you know about them to earn their respect. And then when you're in the broadcast industry, you have to present your questions in a way in which they can be used on air. These are skills that take honing. They don't just happen automatically.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something you could wing. You couldn't do it like an assignment you do the night before. I wouldn't be doing that with an interview, that's for sure. And we've been taught that through planning what you want to say, but be open to like off the cuff, like how the interviews might change, obviously, you know.
Yeah, listening skills.
That's
big
true.
Part of the communication process, actually listening to what, not sticking to your preordained agenda, but actually being prepared to go off at a tangent if an interesting subject matter comes up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If somebody's sitting here watching this, obviously we're all locked in at the moment with the current pandemic. If somebody's sitting listening and they're thinking, shall I, shan't I? What would you say to them about whether they should choose UCFB for their next part of their education?
I think if your goal is to get into sports business, sports media, coaching, with a particular interest, self-interest of football, then it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you take it from my book, I grew up in Brisbane in a rugby-dominated, just everything rugby, and I got a degree, got a job, and thought, what's next? Saw UCFB and thought, what's there to lose? And went for it, and it turned out all right for me. And I came over here knowing no one, having to start fresh. So for you guys, I'm sure you've got your family nearby. Manchester and Wembley isn't that far away. And it's a great university if you want to get into sports business, media, coaching, like I said.
And what does the future hold for you?
Hopefully a job in front of the camera. That'll be a dream. But it's learning skills all across the board in football media. So journalism, interviewing, how to operate cameras, and then obviously how to present. It's not just a one string bow. Hopefully I can learn enough from different placements and work experiences and jobs to get that dream job.
Really good to see you once again. An umbrella is only about $3.99, mate. So if you are going back to Manchester, it's probably worth investing one. Good luck in the future as well if I don't see you for a little while.
Thank you very much, Mark. Same to you.
Cheers. That's Lewis Wiseman. We can hear the perspectives now from three guests who've all carved out, well, actually extensive, sizable careers for themselves in the football and sports media industries. I'm delighted to say he's just coming on screen there now. We're going to hear from Senior Communications Manager at the FA, spokesperson for the England men's team, overseeing all media activity involving the squad. Andy Walker is joining us. We're also joined by a man with a wealth of experience in sport media and broadcasting, former head of media at Sale Sharks Rugby League Club and a presenter working on the BBC for 20 years. Dave Swanton is with us, and also you can see him on screen there as well, a producer, broadcaster, journalist, commentator working with Sky and the BBC, Chris Cooper. And actually, Chris, I mean, Lewis alluded to you. Go on, give us the reverse perspective then. You heard a student's perspective on UCFB. Give us a lecturer's perspective on how you try and nurture future talent. I'll come back to Chris because I don't think his microphone is on. We might just need to double check. And I'll flip to you, Andy. I love your story. I love where you've come from. Give us a little potted history of how you came to be in charge of the England men's team's communications at major tournaments like reaching the semi-finals in 2018 of the World Cup.
Okay, well, I knew at a relatively early age that I was never going to be good enough to get paid to play football. So my one motivation career-wise was, well, what's second best to get paid to watch football, which is where I set off on this path, if you like. So that was around my mid-teens. So progressed, went to university down in Southampton, did a course down there. Come back, did a load of work experience. At that point, I wanted to get into journalism first and foremost, but whether that was print, broadcast or TV was still a little bit up in the air. But as it transpired, I sort of fell into my local newspaper, did an apprenticeship scheme there through what was then known as Trinity Mirror, progressed there all the way across the regional newspapers as a sports journalist for around 6 to 7 years, covering all the Midlands patch as well as some national sport. And then almost by accident then, at that time, this was around 2010, just as sort of social media was becoming known. I was at the Birmingham Post and Mail, and we was doing sort of online internet shows. And I was doing a lot of work on that front, really, and almost left the traditional written side to the side. And then I had an offer from Birmingham City Football Club to go in there and develop their social media strategy, which at that time, and credit to Birmingham, only Manchester City was the only club to employ a full-time social media specialist, which, as you know now, Clem, every club has an army of them doing the job. So it was quite forward-thinking from the club. So that happened, sort of took a gamble. As I said, never set out to get into that realm. Enjoyed it, never looked back, went on to progress to be their head of media and communications across a period of 4.5 years, saw us win the Carling Cup, get relegated, play in Europe as a championship team, and all the fun and frolics that the championship brings you. And then around about 2014, the opportunity to come and work for the FA and in particular the England team came up, and I've been there ever since. So just approaching my 6th anniversary.
And same skill set that you perhaps had back when you were cutting your teeth with Solihull Moors, same skill set that led you through the departments at St Andrews. Obviously, you've added to your experience, you've added to your knowledge, but essentially, those core skills you get at the very start stay with you.
100%. It's fundamentally, and a lot of media roles are linked to the skill set, if you like, of storytelling, which sounds very generic, but actually that's fundamentally what it's about. And whether you're a journalist presenting the facts to a reader, whether you're broadcasting or presenting a story, it's about how you cut through the waves of information to get to the facts that are most relevant. And now from my current role on this side of the fence, if you like, so to speak, is how we sort of facilitate and engage an environment that allows the media to tell those stories effectively to the wider world, because ultimately the media are a conduit between organisations, sports teams and their fans. And often that I think that's forgotten along the way. So that's fundamentally where that skill set develops and lingers.
You're listening there to an award winner. The FA's media team were quite rightly lauded for the way in which they presented the England team to the media during the World Cup in 2018. I'm also delighted to say, Dave, that we've got a man who's celebrating 50 years in the industry. How on earth do you etch out and eke out a career of that length in this industry?
Well, my grandfather years ago introduced me to football at about 6 or 7, and I always wanted to be involved in football. And I wrote my first ever match report at the age of 13 for the local paper. They didn't pay me anything for doing it. And I thought, this is what I want to be involved in when I leave school. I was promised a job at the local paper, who had done the match report for, providing I passed my English literature O level, as they were back in those days. Failed it magnificently. There were only 9 grades, and I got grade 9. So I had to put it on the back burner. But I look at opportunities, and I carried on covering Leyland Motors and Chorley football. And I still do some work for Chorley these days, all these years down the road. Got involved in local radio through commercial radio in '82, when commercial radio was really on the boom. And I contacted the local station and said that the local geographical knowledge of the presenters was poor. I think I can do a better job. I know my sport inside out. And I got a lovely letter back, because there were no emails back then, and said, if you think you're any good, we'll give you a job. And that was my audition for radio. I then went to work in America for 12 months with the Green Bay Packers. Met a guy over there called Peter Deakin, who Chris Cooper knows very well. I met Coops when Coops was covering Bradford Bulls in the 90s. I was involved at Warrington Rugby League Club at the start of Super League. And it was a case of, when you first start in sport, and like you talk about the evolution of what you've got now. I was just listing before, actually. I had a Windows 95 computer that had floppy disks in. This is like the Antiques Roadshow.
Now, steady, we're going to have to get a translator. These are youngsters that are watching this. I don't want to have to start getting a technical analyst on to explain to them what stuff is.
Well, there was a fax machine. I can't remember the last person I saw to use one of those. But I mean, if you look at how media's evolved over 20 years, even when I went to Sale Sharks in the year 2000, I used to fax the team news out. It took me 2.5 hours to send the fact team out on a Friday. Now you look at what you've got now. You've got webinars, you've got YouTube, you've got Facebook Live, you've got newspapers, you've got social media. Where's it going to be in another 20 years? I mean, these people who are tuned in tonight, they're going to be part of that evolution. I mean, it'll left me well behind. I mean, I'm doing well to keep up with what we've got today. But, you know, when you look at the opportunities that there are now, and listening to young Lewis, who said, he asked whether he could ask 3 questions. You'll always do really well, you know, by doing that, and you'll impress a media manager, and he will make that opportunity. But Lewis made his own opportunity.
Yeah. You've been very modest, though, Dave Swanton. I mean, you know, what are the underlying values, beliefs that have allowed you and driven you to still be in the industry 50 years later?
I think, well, a lot of people will tell you that I'm as transparent as I can be. I mean, obviously, sometimes what you have to be, you know, with regard to a media manager, is you've got to be a bit protective about the industry you're working in and the club you're working for. I never hide. If somebody ever rang me, I'd ring them back. You know, always under promise and over deliver. That's a very important one to do. Basically build up your network. I mean, I built a tremendous network up down the years, and I mean, I'm in touch with most of them. Thankfully to BCC on email. Be selective. If you get the trust of people, you get the trust of the journalists, they trust you, and you get to know and you get a good reputation. Basically, and build it up. But one thing I have done over the last 10 years is I've helped many students. One young man who worked at UCFB got himself a degree when he was at Burnley at Turf Moor. I got him a job at Sale Sharks. He's still there, 6 years on. Does a fantastic job for them with all the digital media and everything. And you know, he does a great job. Other students that I've helped down the years, I'm always been there because I can't take this knowledge, this fantastic knowledge with me, and I like to pass it on. And you get a lot of people in the industry who will pass it on to students.
And the students obviously make an impression on you for you to be helping them like that. Chris Cooper, can you hear me okay?
Good evening from Yorkshire.
Great, I've got you. Let's go back to where we were about 5 or 6 minutes ago. I was wanting a lecturer's perspective on working with somebody like a Lewis Wiseman who we heard from.
Well, Lewis was an absolute joy to teach, and he was different from all the other students in as much as he had come from the other side of the world to come and join us. Most of the students, I'm based at the Etihad in Manchester, most of our students are from the Midlands, North Midlands, the North, and further beyond the North, your kind of place, right up in the Northeast and Scotland as well, because naturally people, by and large, from down south tend to go to the Wembley campus. But you get a whole potpourri of students coming along, and the vast majority are coming straight from school, year out from school. Lewis was one of the rarer exceptions who came along as an undergraduate, but as a more mature student who knew a bit about life and sort of thought, right, I think I know where I want to go, but I'm not quite sure how to get there. Whereas a lot of people come thinking, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go, and I haven't got a clue how I'm going to get there, but I want to go and watch Premier League football. Now, if you think that becoming a sports journalist with a sports degree is just about getting a free ticket for the game, it's not for you. What we do is we teach the students to find the story, to look behind the results, look beyond the headlines, ask the questions, the who, what, why, when, where, and how, the questions that journalists in any sphere of news, sport, whatever, they will be asking those questions. We're seeing daily press conferences at the moment involving people with the coronavirus at Downing Street. What do all those questions start with? Who, what, why, when, where, or how? We're asking and teaching people to ask those questions about the sport. Manchester City might beat somebody 3-0. So what? We know they've won 3-0. But how have they done it? When previously they might have lost 3-0. Okay, so we get the students come in from a whole variety of background. They support a whole load of different teams, and we also try to encourage them to become dispassionate about their team. Now, I'm as passionate about my team as you are about yours, Clem, as Swanee is about 30 different teams that he's worked with, as Andy is with Birmingham and with England, and we still love our team, but we cover them dispassionately when we get the opportunity to do so. And you almost forget when you are covering your team that it is your team, certainly when you're going on air talking about them, or if you're writing about them. So we look at all the students that come in, and we gradually do different things with them in terms of giving them a whole rounded experience. They'll do some radio, they'll do some TV. Lewis touched on being able to operate the camera. We don't just teach you how to interview somebody on camera or how to make a TV package. We'll show you how you actually edit it, film it, record it, the whole thing, because in this day and age you have to be multimedia yourself. You've got to, long gone are the days when somebody just stands in front of the camera and does nothing else at all. I can remember when I was being interviewed in a radio studio once, many years ago, back in the previous century, and we had an interviewer, a camera operator, a sound person, and a lighting person. Now, how on earth we got them all into that little radio studio at Plymouth Sound is a miracle in itself. But in this day and age, you wouldn't get that. Most you would get would be two. You'd get a camera operator and an interviewer. So we try to give you a whole rounded view of everything that you will do and teach you what it's like from the perspective of me coming in. We've got former print journalists who work as well. We've got Ali Mann, who's one of the Match of the Day commentators. He does a lot on the TV production module in the second year. We try to show you what the theory is and then how it actually works in practice. Because I've found over the years, when I've been at various radio stations that I've worked at, we've had students come in from various places and they try to tell me how to do my job. Now, if you go out, and I'm sure Swanee might have experienced this as well, when he's had students come along, you get a student say, oh no, we've been told at university you do this, that and the other. Well, hang on, welcome to the real world. This is what you do in practice. So we give you the theory behind it, we give you the practice to go and do it, the opportunities to go and do it yourself, and we show you how people do it in the real world. And
Dave alluded to this. There's that integrity too, isn't there? This is a repeat industry. I alluded to it, 40, 42 weeks of a football season, Chris, but also you will be bumping into the same people again and again and again. There's no corner cutting. You've got to be reliable. Andy was nodding at the ringing people back, doing what you say you'll do. These values of integrity are absolutely crucial to a long-term career in the industry, Chris.
They are indeed, yes. People who've been around a lot longer than me, and even before Swanee, will tell you that the relationships that reporters have with footballers, particularly and managers in this day and age, is very different from maybe 20 years ago, certainly very different from 30, 40 years ago. Now, I know of managers in League Two who won't even give their phone number to the local newspaper reporter, even though he's got as much integrity, he's one of the best guys around, but he just doesn't want to have his phone number. No, you'll see me at the press conference pre-match and you'll see me after the game as well. That's when I'll speak to you. So you've got to try to get a week's worth of stories out of all of them. If you annoy someone, if you break a confidence, if you break an embargo, well, they ain't going to want to deal with you again. Now, I'm very proud of the fact that only once in my career has something that I've been told had an embargo on it that has been broken. And I defend to this day, it wasn't my fault it was broken. I didn't break it. I told somebody else about it. You can run it at 3 o'clock. This was 10 to 3, and they put it out on social media straight away. And of course, it came back to bite them on the proverbial. So, be honest, be trustworthy. Maintain your integrity, because I've been around a long time, not as long as Swanee, although like the three of us, we all got Andy as well. I'm not sure goes back to the previous century in terms of working. I'm one of the longest people around doing sort of same kind of stuff that I'm doing. I've seen loads of people fall by the wayside or go off and do different things. Now I'm very fortunate that I think because of the kind of person that I am, I'm honest. I think Swanee would bear me out on that. And he is a great, if he phones you up and tells you, I've got a story, you know you've got a story. If he's going to arrange something for you, and he's done this on a number of occasions for me, particularly with a very high profile rugby league and rugby union player, you know that he's going to deliver for you. And you want to do a good job for him, because then you know that you'll get, another good story again to come in the future. He referred to somebody called Peter Deacon, sadly no longer with us, one of the great sports administrators and marketeers. He was at the Green Bay Packers then in the 1990s. He was over here. He was a Lancastrian, and he was in charge of marketing at what was Bradford Northern, the rugby league club, when it was a winter sport. Was instrumental in adopting the Bradford Bulls moniker. The rugby league wanted to change into Super League, and he just got so much behind that. At that time, I was working for a radio station in West Yorkshire. I was the morning news editor as well as the sports editor, and my first bulletin was at 6:30 in the morning. I could guarantee every single day, without fail, the phone would go between 10 and 6:20. Coops, I've got a story for you. Here's your 6:30 lead.
Chris, I want to bring Andy in on the other side of the fence, because some of our prospective UCFB students may be watching this and may aspire to a role as a media officer. So what's it like to be on the other side of that? You've got journalists wanting to get stories. You have properties that they want to get into and derive stories from, but you're also defending your brand and your employer, etc. as well. So what's it like to be the guardian at the gate, keeping the castle drawbridge up?
Yeah, I think firstly, going back to today, it's about being respectful to journalists and saying, sort of thinking first and foremost, you're a media officer. You're not a player officer or a club officer. Your role is fundamentally to support the media and enhance media relations, and ultimately that will lead on. If you get that right reputationally, the organisation you're representing will benefit. I think within the industry sometimes there's a bit of short-sightedness on that. There's almost a nervousness not to open up the boundaries and almost shut down anything that could remotely go off-piste. Where we're trying to take, particularly England senior men's team and the development teams below that, so we've got these young English players coming through singing off the same hymn sheet, is to not be fearful for the media, of the media. Don't see it as an obligation. See it as an opportunity. See it as an opportunity to tell your story and ultimately connect to the public. Sell yourself effectively as you do. Don't think about those individuals sat in front of you or that mass of faces in the press conference room. Think about where your messaging is going and where it's being delivered to. So in many ways, the journey we've been on in recent times under Gareth with the England team has been a bit of an education piece, both sides. We've educated the players to see the benefits of good media relations, and also to sell to the media our new strategy in terms of how we are trying to be different and open up those boundaries and almost respect us on that. There'll come times where there'll be, squad sensitivities or injury news that we might not want to get out, but when the opportunity is there, we'll work with them. So I think first and foremost in this role, it's about having that mutual respect and understanding. And I'm fortunate to have come from a background of a sports journalism, so I can wear both caps and understand both roles. Where for somebody who just comes straight into the PR world, it can take a while for them to get up to speed. So anybody fresh to the industry, that would be my biggest piece of advice: is have, no matter how ludicrous you may view a question to be, have respect, because there's a reason why it's been asked and there's a job being done at the other end.
Nevertheless, your role is, I guess, hostage to fortune as well, in so much as personalities dictate, great leaders set the tone, don't we? We've only got to look at a club manager like a Jurgen Klopp, who has revitalised not just a team, but a club, half a city. So I guess you might find yourself working with a personality who's a certain type for a couple of years, and then a much more open person like a Gareth Southgate. So you've got to be adaptable as well there, Andy.
Definitely. I think football is an industry of fascinating personalities, different levels of experience and ability to speak with the media and engage with the media. And that's part of the challenge. And ultimately, I see the role of media officers and comms professionals as a support arm to that. In many ways, in the same way you'd get a medical team at a club or a performance analysis team. They support one function. Our function is to support the players when it comes to engaging with the media and ultimately how engaging with the wider fan base, opponents, wider world, how it may be. So that's the way I view our role.
I want to ask you all about the current coronavirus pandemic. Our thoughts are obviously with anybody that has been touched or affected by this terrible, terrible virus that is keeping us all in the house, or I hope it is keeping us all in the house at the moment. Stay indoors, protect the NHS, save lives, please, everybody. Got a question from Dimitri, Andy, asking about the FA's communication strategy with the current situation without Euro 2020. Was there a point with that where you have to see the bigger picture and not just mourn the loss of how your summer was planned out, but to look at the implication for an entire nation?
Definitely. And it's interesting because for so long, obviously, we heard the updates on the coronavirus and we knew something very serious was on the horizon. But I don't think anybody, 2 weeks out from, when the first sort of lockdown guidance came in, would we ever expect it to reach this stage? And, we were deliberating about whether our March internationals might be postponed, let alone Euros and potentially beyond at the moment. So it was tough to get handled, but very quickly, as soon as we got wind that the Euros were cancelled, for us, our focus, and a lot of this has come from Gareth, and you might have seen the open letter that he issued. Quickly, we realised, look, football is secondary. And for me, debates about transfer windows and everything is irrelevant at the moment. It's more what we should be clinging on to is how football can be a force for good, and how we can sort of educate and inspire the wider world. And at the moment, our role is to push as hard as we can the important government advice to stay home, save lives, and always support the NHS. And to the question you had, I think it was from Dimitri, said, which is a very good question. It was quite exhausting, actually. The first week we were sort of stuck in this working from home webinar world. I have to admit, it was quite exhausting because there's almost an explosion of ideas from all colleagues, almost wanting to, grasp everything, how we can sort of do this and inspire this and work this. And you had to let a period where be less scattergun with your approach, let the dust settle. And we quickly formed a new content strategy, which you might see across our channels, which is under the umbrella #FootballStayingHome, which is clearly a play on football's coming home. And the idea before that is a series of content every day, which is aimed to inform, entertain, and empower the nation, is ultimately our intention. And that lives on our channels. So, our assets, be that Gareth, the players, historic footage we may have, brings to life that narrative. And then also from our point of view, we're now mindful of the media more than ever needing column inches and airtime to be filled. So over the course of the next few weeks, months, under that football staying home narrative, however long this continues, we're going to start proactively reaching out with maybe some interesting feature ideas that often don't get a look in because of the news agenda, which we sort of clearly respect. So we're now, if you like, working harder than ever to facilitate the media and trying to go on the front foot, but crucially always mindful that forget about the fundamentals of football and the game itself. That is very much secondary. It's how us as an industry can now help to inspire and motivate wider society.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, David, at a more grassroots level as well, people in the media have to be adaptable to this, looking for the human interest stories and going wider than just people throwing or kicking or catching a ball.
Well, yeah. Newspapers at the moment, if you look at any newspaper, it's got several pages they've got to fill. And journalists at the moment are like banging their head on a brick wall saying, like, I need to be able to print something. It needs to be that bit different. We are blessed within sport that within football, we've got Gareth Southgate, a manager who will talk. With cricket, we've got Joe Root who will talk. We've got rugby union people who will talk, rugby league people who will talk. What newspapers have got to do, as you say, is you've got to do a sideways look at things. And people want to ask questions. The big question is everybody asks every day, when do you think the pandemic will finish? Nobody knows. So you're going to say to yourself, right, well, a good contact of mine who's a lawyer based in Leeds, I've got him some media recently, and he's talked about, obviously, the contractual side of things, what will happen with TV, what will happen with newspapers, will the season ever end? Will we go into next year? Will next year be decided behind closed doors in courtrooms and things like that? That was a good news story because people want to know the answers to it. And the good thing about media is the fact that people crave information. When they stop craving information, we're all out of a job. So, you know, you've got to look at it, you've got to say to yourself, the Sky Sports news boys, I mean, I speak to quite a lot of them during the week, and, you know, they'll ring up and say, do you know of anybody? I've got the contacts to be able to do things. And without making things difficult for Andy with England and saying, oh, he wants to talk to you about England or whatever. If something ever came that way, I said, look, you've got to go through the FA. I can't give you that number out. If it's with regard to rugby union, if it's not too touchy, what I would do is I might go to the player and say, look, you've an opportunity here. I've gone through the media manager at your club. Do you want to talk to these guys in the media? Good thing about this is the fact that what I'm doing is I'm building something for myself, because at some time in the future, and we don't know when the future is yet, somebody's going to stand on the start line and wave that green flag. There's a lot of people out there at the moment, and this is an exciting time for students, and they've put the queue in the rack. They're not answering the phone. There's out of office emails coming back to people. I've contacted the club. It came back. I'm away for the foreseeable future and I'll be in touch. That's not what a journalist wants to do. So guys who, you know, are going to be starting, you know, with UCFB, who's to say that in 5 years' time, we won't have another pandemic, right? But we're all ready for it now, because actually we now know we're getting to know some answers for the future.
Yeah, an exciting time for students, Chris Cooper.
I think it is, because Andy alluded there to the content that they're making, and I'm sure we all worry for the futures of some newspapers, because every day I see on my Twitter feed people saying, please go and buy a newspaper. You know, we've just seen that the Mirror have furloughed about, is it 20% of their staff? I'm sure other newspapers, other groups are going to be doing the same. But there is the opportunity to be even more creative. We've stressed this with one of our assignments as well, actually, the TV production module for coursework 2. You're supposed to be making a TV program with a group of 10 or 12 people. Physically impossible. So we've had to redo that module in the space of a couple of days. But we've been able to stress you can be even more creative now than you would have been in the first place, because you're going to be designing this program. The only thing you're not going to do is actually make the program. But in terms of the content that is being generated, some of the England stuff that Andy met is really good. I think it was Manchester City who really hit the nail on the head about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, with some of the social digital media content that they started doing, which was when they had the 12 Days of Christmas and they had different players singing the songs. And there were some absolutely hilarious ones. And suddenly people realized, hang on, we can use social media not just as a trail for what we've got coming up in our lunchtime program, or here's a recap of the day's transfer. We can actually make specific humorous content that has got absolutely nothing to do with football. Now, some of those that I particularly like recently have been the toilet roll challenge, you know, which you've got footballers at home, and also from an entertaining perspective, some of them look quite funny. I know a lot of players have been told, you know, if you've got a nice big garden with a 100-yard drive, don't show it off. Go and sit in the little corner by the sandpit, because you don't want to be, you know, making out that you're at home in luxury. But you've got the opportunity to come up with all these ideas. Now, the great advantage at the moment for a lot of people, I'm sure. Now I do work for BBC Radio Humberside as a freelance sports broadcaster, but not at the moment because there isn't the sport. I also do stuff for Sky Sports, not at the moment because there isn't the sport. But what a lot of people are doing is they're getting in touch with people and doing interviews on Skype, on Zoom, or whatever. A lot of people have got a lot of time in their hands at the moment, and most of them, they're quite happy to talk. Particularly, I've noticed quite a few ex-players who we don't hear from. You know, somebody who might have been a hero at a local club 20 years ago. What's he doing now? Get him on Skype. They found him, boom, and they've done a great 10-minute interview. You can use the radio, and you've got the social media.
And the boundaries have changed as well. The facilities have changed. We're all getting used to producing pictures like this. We're seeing them on our 10 o'clock news. Big audiences are seeing them. So it's opening up the gateways for people to be entrepreneurial, to be a bit more self-contained. You can pick up, you know, I'll share with you now, for doing this now, I've had to buy a clip mic, couple of clip mics, 150 quid, a little light and a stand, 100 quid. I mean, we can be quite self-contained, and the sort of parameters have changed. The fine arts of sort of massive 10, 20 grand cameras have changed. People can go.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying as well. about the content, you can be more creative. I wonder as well, once all this is sorted out, yes, Dave says we might have another one in 5 years' time. We'll be ready for it. But I wonder how many organisations are going to say, well, you know what, 2-3 years ago, we were saying, no, it was impossible for you to work from home. Suddenly, a lot of people are able to work from home, including people like me, like Andy, like Swanee, like you. We can do it, which is going to have other impacts on society, in terms of global warming. Apparently, the skies are so clear and everything now, and a lot of rivers are also suddenly getting a lot clearer because they're not getting the pollution going into them. So people are going to see other benefits, and they're thinking outside the box. Well, we've always done this. If we've wanted to do an interview with a footballer, we've gone to the club, we've done him there, we filmed it, we've sent it back. No, now we can just talk to him in his lounge or talk to him in his kid's sandpit or whatever. Brilliant.
Let's start to ramp towards the end of this taster session, this breakout media applicant experience session for our prospective USB students. Dave, what bits of advice would you give to our students out there at this stage in their careers where, they want to move to university, they've got an eye on the prize they want, could be sports, media, journalism. What advice would you give them?
I would say, if you were going to go to university, I've had a lot of people from work experience in the past. Nobody at UCFB has ever let me down, because when they've come, they've actually wanted to be there. It's not, of course, they've been forced to go to that particular university. I like what I was hearing from Lewis with his now Mancunian Brisbane accent, developing very nicely. The fact that, like, he asked about 3 questions, the fact that, if you've got, I should say, the confidence to sit down with somebody as big as Alan Shearer and basically put a crack in like that he did before he started his interview, that lad is going to go a long way. It's not something that you develop overnight. What I would do is be honest. I know a lot of journalists, the old school, are quite wary of the young people coming through, because they think, well, what they do is at a press conference after the game, they put their nice Apple phone or their Samsung phone on the desk, get all the quotes from all the questions that all the managers answer, and then they go away typed up as though it's their own work. I would say what I've done in the past with students, I've said, look, if you can think of a question, right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. And I do this with a lot of journalists as well. If a journalist ever came to me and said to me, I've got this and I'm keeping it, it's red hot, but this has happened and I'd like an answer to it. And I've thought to myself, that really doesn't belong in a press conference. I've said, give me a timeout for 2 minutes. I'll go and see the coach. I'll take the journalist in to see the coach and I'll say, look, we've got a particular question here. How do you as coach want to answer it? Now, if you get something like that, then you get your exclusive. Once you get an exclusive, you're on the roller coaster. But, you learn that anybody who's, going to enroll for UCFB will learn so much. I mean, I know Colm, who, is a journalist with the Manchester Evening News, been a friend for a lot of years. I've known Coops for a lot of years. Some of the guest speakers that they've got, they're all people that you can, in effect, as you said at the start yourself, you're a sponge tonight. Just take all this information on board, and quite simply, if you are going to join UCFB, if I had a son who was going to be involved in media, I wouldn't say you're going to UCFB, but I think by exposing him to, things like this tonight, webinars and open days and everything, I think he would make his own mind up that he wanted to go there.
How do you see the future looking for the next generation, the generation about to start degrees? Finally, Chris Cooper.
Fantastic.
I thought you were going to ask me that one. Who knows where it's going to happen? I've been in the industry in radio and then in TV for a long time, and things totally change. When I moved from music presentation into sports journalism, and then I moved up north from Plymouth, I didn't actually have a specific plan of thinking, right, well, I'm going to give Yorkshire 2 years, 5 years, whatever. I never actually planned too far ahead. I don't think you can now in that sense, because there are so many changes. Who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time? The future is certainly going to be more digital content rather than linear radio and linear TV. I can see the day where sports news, whether it's on TV or radio, is available on demand for a 10-15 minute loop or something. There's radio stations in America that have been doing this for many years. When I was at Sky Sports News Radio, which was closed down several years ago, we did a relaunch, and we based the format on a station called 1010 in New York, which is a news station. And so you would have a 10-minute bulletin, which would start at the top of the hour and go through to 10 past the hour. You'd start again. You'd have the same top story, but you'd give it a different treatment. Say if it was a match from the night before, rather than looking at it from the perspective of the team that's won, you might look at it from the perspective of the team that's lost. That would go through until 20 past, and then guess what you do? You start again for another 10 minutes, and you have another spin on it. So you've got the same top stories, then some other stories which will change around. You might have a slightly longer interview, a 2-minute interview with somebody in one of those sections. And then at 50:30, you would start again, modeled more or less on the top half hour. You would tweak and change things. Those 10 minutes can be sent out as on social media, on whatever platform you're on. Then if you're on the train, the bus, the tram, if you're in Manchester, you think, oh, hang on, I want to hear the latest sports news. Boom. And you've got it in that 10 minutes, because it'll be updated every 10, 20 minutes on social media. You know, the BBC Sounds has got so many things like that as well. That is the way I think it is going to go in X number of years' time. This might hasten it. This might hasten change.
The ever-evolving sports, media, football market. Andy, I want to finish with a couple for you, not least of which, because Bradley asks, and I don't know if you know something I don't, what are the perks of being a media officer? I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means by that.
Well, first and foremost, the perks of being a media officer in sport is that you get to work on the front line of sport, ultimately, which, we wouldn't be in this game if we didn't love sport. So for that very motivation, who else wouldn't want a job where it's almost a hobby as well? You know, every day you get up, something's different. Every day you get up, you look forward to it. The range of different people you come across, the manner, as we touched on there, in which the industry is evolving as well. It's just exciting from top to bottom. And yeah, you do get tough days, but it's one of the ones where I'm very quick to pinch myself and realise that life could be much, much worse, even in this bizarre situation we find ourselves in at the current times as well.
Well, give us a little flavour of, I mean, do you have a typical day? Is there a typical day?
Under current circumstances? Or
yeah, no, under your usual circumstances. Actually, let's make it training camp relevant. You know, what would a typical day look like for you? Let's say that the boys are all at St George's Park and getting ready for a game.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a typical media day at St George's Park, because on sort of recommendation from the media themselves, we sort of tend to host all our activity on one day at the start of the camp to allow for them to get all their content in the camp one day, and then we do a series of embargoes across the course of the week. So they're only getting one trip to St George's Park, and then the players themselves are only having to commit one day to media, and then they have a few days off in the build up to the game. So that day would typically be usually sort of, we do a media summary each day. So we would have done that the morning off. So I usually get up about 6-ish. We pull together all the headlines. That's then circulated around the sort of senior management, technical team and FA staff, just to give people a flavour of what the media are talking about on that day. We'll then pick off the sort of 12 to 14 players that on that one day in particular do media. So we usually send them a WhatsApp of who they're going to be speaking to on that day, just to touch base on what's on the horizon in terms of reminder who we're playing, when the last time we played them type of thing, so they're aware of any notable talking points. We'll then send that out first in the morning. Around breakfast time, we'll pick them off and just make sure they're in a good place and they're still happy for the media doing. Then the medias tend to arrive on camp ahead of our first training session around 11. So me and my team, we tend to sort of take the media down to open training, which is usually about half an hour to 40 minutes. There's usually sometimes a few ad hoc requests off the back of that with member of staff interviews. And then from about sort of 2 o'clock through to 5 o'clock on a big rotating wheel is when we bring the players down to do a series of several different interviews. So we have our big press conference interview, we have written briefings, we have radio briefings, we have broadcast rights holders interviews as well. And then there might be, particularly in this new age, sort of ad hoc YouTube type features, which we will facilitate as well. So all that is happening under a mad 3 hours. And then once that is done and dusted, we take a breath, we recap, we have a bite to eat, and then we make sure it's important that we pick up with the players afterwards to see how that went for them. Because I think that's almost an important part of the education process. You know, sometimes players might have enjoyed a type of interview, so then we know they might want to do it again. There might be a question which caused a bit of puzzlement, which might need to go back and clarify. So we just make sure they're in a good place, really, and then ready ourselves for the fresh wave of media that follows the day after.
And I want to finish on a high. Do you ever pinch yourself? Do you ever realise sort of where you've got to? Oh my goodness me! I've got to take the England head coach into a press conference. I've got to take our latest star player into a media briefing. Yeah,
I've always been, if you like, immune to any element of being starstruck. There's never anybody that I've sort of stood next to or in the same room of and thought, blimey, what am I doing here? But when moments like that do hit me is when sort of friends, family, colleagues sort of, observe, I'll just mention in passing what I'm doing or who I'm spoken to or what I'm working on. It's almost their reaction and their enthusiasm for it when it sort of knocks me back initially and makes me realise how fortunate I am. But but ultimately that it's part and parcel of working hard and being at the top of the game. It'd be easy to rest on your laurels and think, I've sort of made it, but I haven't really. I'm ambitious and want to keep on driving forward and keep on improving media relations for the England team and the wider FA.
Listen, I've absolutely loved that, fellas. Our thanks go to Chris Cooper, to Dave Swanton, to Andy Walker. I hope that's given you a little bit of a flavour, prospective UCFB students, as to how the university works and the sort of insights you will get. I mean, I picked up some great stuff there. Maybe you want to make a little note of some takeaways yourself, but under promise, over deliver, said Dave. We talked about the values of integrity, about longevity, about throwing yourself into a situation, and the opportunities will be there for you, the next generation. They won't look quite like they do now. There'll be new, exciting avenues. They're there to be opened up and exploited. And if you'd like to, UCFB are there to potentially help you. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the guys, I think they're all on LinkedIn. So that'll give them something to do over the next couple of days, replying to your messages. Won't it? If you need any further help with your route into UCFB, then please email us, study@ucfb.com. That's study@ucfb.com, or via live chat on the website, www.ucfb.ac.uk. We will be back again tomorrow with our football and sport business session. Join us if you can. If not, stay safe, and we hope to see you soon at UCFB. Good night, everybody.